Continuing from part 1. First, a few points to answer from the comments. I don't have any DNA test results back yet. That can take weeks. But now that I know Sophie is in no danger of dating a relative, the pressure is off. I'll get into this momentarily, but it frankly no longer matters if Luke fathered the children. I highly doubt my father-in-law is having an affair with Amy. At worst, he might know or even just suspect the truth about Amy and Luke. But it's also possible that he just refuses to believe they would do such a thing. I've been vague about details for privacy, but to put it very simply, Jim and Amy are both pretty white. Kat and Luke are not. Had Jim fathered Amy's babies, they would look different than they do. Nevertheless, I do have an update. While a stream of comments have called me spineless and naive, called me a sister wife, as an ex-Mormon, that hits a particular nerve. And most recently, a stream of comments have said, my story is fake. Fair enough, it's the internet. But Luke is not the first scumbag husband to have 2 families. Several other comments have been incredibly kind and supportive, and I really appreciate that. Apologies if I haven't responded to a comment or direct message that you sent. I covered as many as I could, but I was literally getting hundreds, so I definitely missed several of them. First things first. I discussed this in the comments, but our little team has supposedly recruited my mother-in-law. I say supposedly because Sophie and Tom were going to talk to her about getting help with submitting the DNA test, and, at the advice of my lawyer, I am staying out of the process. Officially, I told Sophie not to do it, and she said she wouldn't. Mother-in-law hasn't contacted me about it either. Though we have been in touch, I'll get into that more in a moment. The bottom line is that I can honestly say I had no knowledge of any DNA test. Loophole City. Another bit of good news. I was digging through the paperwork in preparation for my divorce, wanting to get a head start against Luke, and one thing that came to my attention is that my name is on the paperwork for our home. Luke's name is not. I was the one who bought the house, and we always planned to add Luke onto the paperwork at some point, but we never got around to it, and eventually the idea was forgotten. It was my lawyer, Paige, who pointed this out to me, and it was like finding a winning lottery ticket on the ground. I don't know where I'd be without Paige. She's a dear friend from college, who I reached out to, hat in hand, for help. She's been there for me this past week, not just as legal counsel, but as a friend I really needed right now. The thing is, she's not our lawyer, me and Luke. We have our own family attorney who has helped us out of jams in the past. We clashed with our HOA a few years ago, not worth getting into right now, but Paige is a lawyer who specializes in family law and has handled divorces before. Luke remembers her from college and knows she went into law, but doesn't know she's a divorce attorney. So I can have her over for coffee, like we're catching up. And he has no idea anything is going on. Turns out, he's not the only one who can harbor someone under his spouse's nose under the guise of being a friend. So, on to the update. The last time I looked in Luke's phone was 3 months ago, around the point Sophie and Tom began to go around claiming they wanted to date. I found nothing. While I know how to search for recently deleted photos and didn't see any, my comments taught me how to find recently deleted messages. So, when Luke was asleep, I did just that, swiped his phone and brought it downstairs, checked recently deleted. I am glad I did, but I also wish I had not, because I'm still reeling from the pain. Sure enough, a conversation with Amy had been deleted. Recent texts talking about the conflict between her and me, with Amy describing me as a problem, and Luke trying to pacify her without defending me at all, to be clear. They both alluded to how they had expected this for a while and just hoped it would never happen, presumably me accusing them of having an affair. While the whole conversation and the fact that it was deleted was sketchy, nothing was actually admitted. So I scrolled a bit higher to a few days before the fight. Amy's messages got a bit more flirty. Then I saw it. 5 days before I confronted them, Amy had sent Luke a topless pic, a selfie with no shirt or bra. Guys, I teared up. I knew it was true. I knew it in my bones, but seeing the proof still cut me like a hot knife. Doesn't help that Amy's always had bigger breasts than me. I exited the Messages app and checked Luke's recently deleted photos. Sure enough, the same selfie was there and others. Amy topless, Amy naked, in various poses to show off. There were pictures of the two of them together, cuddled and pressed close like a couple. In some of these, she was naked. In some, they both were. There were videos. Amy sent Luke a video message of herself topless, and I had to actually hear her voice talking to him in a tone that made me sick, about how she was sending him a quick video to help him get through the day. In more than one video, she called him her boo, and hearing her call him that, I almost vomited. Stopped looking at that point. I'd seen enough. For about 5 minutes anyway, then a strange compulsion to keep searching led me to check Luke's laptop. I knew enough of his passcodes to access his iCloud storage and, basically more of the same. There were letters, long letters between them. I didn't have the heart to read past the first few lines of one of them, but I did read Luke mention our children. There were countless naked, topless selfies of Amy, selfies of them together, videos where Amy appeared to be self-intimacy. There were intimacy tapes of the two of them. Tom had previously offered to try and hide a camera in Amy's room, but frick, he never needed to. Luke was hiding a whole treasure trove under my nose all along. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. There were so many, going back years. Not all of it was even intimacy. There were some photos of Amy's kids, too. One video was of Kaylee and the twins playing together when they were younger, and Luke and Amy's voices from behind the camera. There were even old pictures of Luke and Amy from when they were younger. I'd even say teenagers. I snapped. All these years, I had been telling myself I had to be wrong, that it couldn't be true. Well, it was true. I know that no one forced me to look at as much of the evidence as I did, but I'm still hurting very badly from having seen it. And in that moment, I wanted to act. So I did. I called my lawyer, who is a remarkable woman. It was the middle of the night, so I had to call her twice, and she picked up. Though I had woken her, when I asked her to come by and said it was an emergency, she agreed. I also asked her to draw up the paperwork and have it ready. She told me that she'd already had it ready since I first reached out to her. As I waited for her, I went through the necessary channels on Luke's laptop to make sure he wouldn't be able to remotely disconnect our access to his little stash, changing passwords and all that. My lawyer, let's call her Paige, arrived, and I went outside to greet her in the car. Spent a good half hour in the passenger seat just crying, and she was great about that, before I passed her Luke's phone and his laptop with all the information she needed to use them. She warned me that this could be considered theft, so I asked her to forward and print out copies of everything she could and then bring the items back, because I just couldn't bear to do it myself. She agreed. I went back inside, and then I packed up Luke's things while the house slept. At one point, Owen got up to use the bathroom and asked me what I was doing, but I told him I was just cleaning. Luke stirred once or twice while I was in the bedroom but did not wake. I got all of his things packed into trash bags and I loaded up the car. That's when I woke him up and told him to come outside. He was confused and half asleep, but he did notice things were missing. I ignored his questions and just told him to come with me. So he followed me outside. Once we were by the car, I pulled out the divorce papers and officially handed them to him. That was about when he figured out what I was doing, and he tried to talk me out of it. Tried to be sweet with me, to be tender. He kept insisting that he loved me and that there had never been anything with Amy. Kept trying to persuade me not to tear our family apart. Even 2 weeks ago, I might have wilted under him because the manipulation and gaslighting were truly masterclass. But I can see through it now. I didn't tell him that I knew he was full of shoot. I didn't tell him what I had seen. I just told him we were finished. He tried a different approach. He refused to go. Stated firmly that our children were his too, and that even if we were separating, I had no right to just decide the kids would stay with me over him. This was where I very coldly presented the paperwork, reminding him that the house is in my name, and told him under no circumstances would my kids be staying with Amy. He argued a while longer, but in the end he decided to be the bigger person and keep the peace. At that moment, I didn't care where he went. Before he left, he did ask about his phone and laptop, and I waved him off by saying they were in one of the bags. Bought a little time. I couldn't sleep for the rest of that night. I cried more. Eventually, I realized I'd have to wake my children up early and explain to the extent that I could. Naturally, I woke Sophie first. I told her that I had kicked her father out and that I had discovered evidence of an affair on his devices. I did not specify what kind of evidence, and she did not ask. I woke up the others and gently told them that their dad had gone to stay somewhere else for a while, that I wasn't sure where, but from now on, things were going to be different. Louise was the one to ask if we were getting divorced, and I couldn't lie to her. I told her yes. Owen asked when they could see their father again, and I wanted to cry. Sophie was a very big help, urging her siblings to be sympathetic to me right now and worry about Dad later. I knew better than to poison them against their father. Paige warned me against doing that as well. So I only told Sophie that the affair was confirmed since she had already been in the know. However, as the kids were getting ready for school, Owen approached me and asked me point blank if it was about Amy, if Luke was going to be with her instead of me. I couldn't answer, but I suppose that's an answer on its own. Got the kids to school, and my next step was calling to have the locks changed. I knew Luke would be back for his devices before long, but thankfully Paige returned with them before he showed up again. It was a very quick visit. She just told me that all was accomplished, and she had records of everything we would need in court. Sure enough, Luke turned up an hour later, demanding to know where his laptop and phone were. I had set them back in our bedroom like they had never moved, and I just told him he had forgotten them. He insisted that I had said they were in one of the bags, so I just shrugged him off and told him I must have been mistaken. After he grabbed them, he tried again to reason with me, but I just showed him the door. I knew the kids would start to come home from school before long, and I think he was trying to delay leaving so he could see them. I was not having it. I started shouting again and sent him on his way. I'm still just in absolute pain and despair for what I saw. I don't know if he'll realize that anyone went through his devices and made copies of the evidence, or if he suspects I saw anything, but he obviously didn't say so. After he left, I cried once again. Talked to my mother-in-law that night. Apparently, Luke did show up to his parents' house, which was a surprise, as I was so certain he'd stay with Amy. But maybe even he knows how suspicious that would look to the children and doesn't want to rock the boat as much. Maybe he knows I'm more likely to let my children see their grandmother than Amy at this point, and he wants to see them to give his version of events. That is not happening. Kat already shared his version with me that he relayed to her and Jim, that I'm having some kind of mental breakdown, that he wishes he could help me, but my paranoia is causing me to lash out and turn violent. I was never violent. I shoved him away when he tried to hold me, that is all. And what's so hilarious is that he didn't mention Amy at all to his parents. He didn't even frame it as me falsely believing he was having an affair. Even though that's his story when talking to me, he left Amy out of it when talking to his parents. Kat noticed that. She believes me. Jim doesn't know what to believe anymore. According to Kat, he seemed very, very troubled by what he heard from all sides. As for Amy, she's radio silent. Tom has told Sophie that she's acting like nothing is wrong, but is clearly stressed out. That when her children ask, she makes the same sort of claims. That I am having some kind of emotional, nervous breakdown and pushing her away, as well as Luke. She doesn't mention anything about my accusing them of an affair, but still puts it all on me. Amy has not reached out to talk to me directly, and I have not tried talking to her since our big argument. I haven't really told my kids anything, just that I'm having disagreements with Luke and Amy, though I was very clear that it is not a question of my mental health. Honestly, I think they all kind of know what's going on. Sophie continues to be my rock, as I try to be for her and the others, and Tom continues to be our spy in the ranks. Right now, my biggest regret is the stress that all of this is causing on the children, which I knew it would, but it still needed to be done. My life has fallen apart, but it was never my life. Now for the 6 days later update. In my last post, there were a number of criticisms toward Paige. You guys will like this update, as it turns out, you weren't the only ones who had a problem with her. As far as the deed being in my name, It's not an absolute hook, line, and sinker, but Paige is convinced that between that and my having been the one paying the mortgage, I stand a very good chance. It could be interpreted as a common marital property, but I'm going for primary custody with supervised visits anyway. I'm playing hardball. People also questioned whether I should still be posting these, but so long as it's all anonymous, I am in the clear. Doesn't even matter if someone who knows me could figure out I posted this. I didn't use any real names or reveal my location or anything like that. As for the laptop, even Paige admitted that was questionable. But technically, I gave permission, and she was only doing what I could have easily done on my own. I just really didn't want to go through all of that content. As far as the divorce papers, Paige had them filled out after the very first time I contacted her. My serving them to Luke was ceremonial. She still contacted him later to officially serve him and request his lawyer's details. But before he could respond, I had already done something a little sneaky. I reached out to our family attorney, the one who has always been on call to represent me and Luke during our marriage. He helped us out of a jam with the HOA a while back. I'll call him Zach. Now, contrary to some of the comments' suggestions, I cannot just go around town consulting with every lawyer in the area with the explicit purpose of locking my husband out of hiring them. That is bad faith, and judges don't look too kindly on it. However, this was Zach. He had been my attorney and Luke's for years. I feel like I had just as much right to him as Luke did, and I got there first, so I was able to nail down our family's lawyer. Met with both him and Paige, and boy howdy, do they not like each other. Zach brought up some of the same problems as some of my comments. He argued that Paige's activity was in the gray area and urged me to hire him to represent me in the divorce instead. That caused a bit of conflict as Paige is explicitly a family attorney, and this is her specialization. So I'm going to be consulting both of them from here on out. Zach actually thinks it's a good thing that I made these posts, as they can't really do much other than prove my sanity when Luke and Amy try to argue otherwise. Overall, I am doing better. I've been talking to a friend in real life, the mom of one of Sophie's friends. I also have therapy scheduled for myself, and I intend to look into family therapy as well. When my kids ask me what's going on, I simply tell them that their father and I are having adult problems, and it's nothing they need to worry about. That worked for about a day. Sophie warned me they were planning to confront me as a group, and they did, asking if Dad had cheated on me with Amy. Obviously, they've been talking about this, and perhaps they have been for longer than I had anticipated. Perhaps they've been wondering. Again, even though I had absolute proof, I was hesitant to tell them as much, and let me explain why. I naturally wouldn't tell them about the pornographic content I found. I would simply say that I found messages between Luke and Amy revealing their affair. But with the exception of Sophie, they wouldn't be satisfied with that. I already know Carter, curious little sweetheart that he is, would want to see these messages. So instead, when I was asked directly by my kids if their dad had cheated on me, I simply said, I believe he did, yes, with as much sincerity as I could muster. I think they believe me. Tom and Sophie are texting nonstop, and from what I can gather, there's doubt among Amy's children as well that this is about me losing my mind and not about their mother being too close to my husband. I think it's slowly sinking in for poor Jim that what he didn't want to believe was possible is very much possible, and it's happening. I haven't shown him or Kat any letters or anything. They're hosting Luke, so I haven't had much of any contact with them at all. But I did have one phone call with Kat where we wished each other well. That was nice. In the background, I could hear shouting, and though Kat quickly went outside, I did hear what sounded like Jim shouting at Luke. He doesn't usually shout. He's the calmest man I've ever met, so in a way I'm worried about him, but also relieved that the wool is being pulled off of his eyes. According to Kat, Luke is still staunchly denying everything. He was pretty upset when he found out that I had poached Zach, though, which gave me a kind of grim satisfaction. The test results came back. Sophie and Tom tested their DNA against each other to see if they truly are blood siblings. Here's a surprise. According to the test, they're not. They don't share any DNA. To everyone who believed Jim had fathered Amy's babies, here is definitive proof that he did not, because the test would have revealed that too. But I never believed it anyway. Sophie has her doubts and wonders if the results weren't faulty and if we shouldn't take another test to be absolutely certain, but I'm not really worried about that. More confused than anything. I was so certain Tom had to be Luke's son. He was too. Now he doesn't know what to think, and I don't either. I obviously now know the affair happened and lasted years, and I know from the letters that Kaylee is Luke's child, or at least both he and Amy seem to believe she is, which confirms they were intimate 15 years ago. Now I'm just wondering, for Tom's sake, who, if not Luke, is his father? He does kind of look like Luke, but that might just be coincidence. In general, everything was quiet for a few days until it wasn't, until she finally showed her face. My best friend, Amy. I am so happy I installed Ring cameras everywhere, as you are about to understand. Sure enough, Amy turned up on my doorstep and asked to talk. She had a relaxed demeanor and did not raise her voice. Assuming she was approaching me on Luke's behalf, I told her that I wasn't interested in talking to her and to just go away. She did not leave, but she didn't make a scene either. She persisted in telling me we needed to have a conversation. The kids weren't home and did have cameras inside. I was also recording her on my phone and being discreet about it. So eventually, I relented and let her in. I don't know if she realized she was on camera. We sat down on the couch and she instantly got into the reason for her visit. It turns out she and Luke know or suspect that I procured damning material from his laptop. Amy accused me of going through his devices and told me that anything I found was not my business and I needed to delete it. That was all she had to say. No apology, no admission of guilt, didn't take responsibility for her own behavior. Hell, she might have known I was recording her because she didn't even directly acknowledge what the sensitive material on Luke's laptop actually was. So I confronted her, letting out some of my anger. I asked how she could have the nerve to make demands of me. I asked her why she and Luke would do a thing like this in the first place. Why had they seen fit to spend all these years betraying me? I posed the question that I'd been wondering about for a long time, and as I expected, I got no answer. Literally, Amy didn't seem to really hear me even as I confronted her. She seemed like she was stressed, panicked even, but she was keeping it under wraps. She ignored my questions and accusations and just kept telling me to delete whatever content from Luke's laptop that I had. She said that if I wanted to divorce Luke, that was my call, but not to drag her into it. Oh, that made me so mad. I kept my temper, but I did snap back that she was already very much in it. Amy just kept repeating herself, telling me to delete whatever I found. So I just refused. I asked her, point blank, why I should. Why did I have any reason to? Amy got more aggressive, raising her voice. She was trying to intimidate me, but I held my ground. She told me that this wasn't about me and that I needed to just do as she said, that it was very important. So I asked again, why? And yet again, she would not answer. So I asked her if Luke had sent her to do this or if she had shown up on her own. No answer to that either. It was like talking to a brick wall. So I asked her to leave. Just as I'd been afraid of, she wouldn't go. She refused to leave until I had deleted everything I'd found in front of her. I couldn't help laughing. I told her no, that wasn't going to happen. This is where I could see her starting to freak out more. In another moment, she got up, ran into the other room, and grabbed my laptop. Before I could stop her, she smashed it on the floor. I really don't know why she thought that would work or get her the outcome she wanted. I think she was just panicking. Obviously, I still have everything, except now I need to buy a new laptop. And sadly, her doing this was out of frame of the camera. But it's fine. All of my important files are backed up, and at that moment, I was more concerned that Amy would do something else drastic. She looked like she was going to have a breakdown. I tried again, very calmly, to tell her that she needed to leave or I would call the police. She refused again and just kept repeating her demand that I drop this whole cheating angle and divorce Luke without trying to argue that an affair took place. At that point, I just stared at her, at the woman I had considered one of my dearest friends in all the world, and I told her that I didn't owe her anything, but she owed her children the truth, that they had the right to know where they came from, who Luke really was to them. Amy bristled and told me it was none of my business, that I didn't understand her family and I needed to back off. She kept going back to this idea that I could divorce Luke, but I must not claim he'd had an affair with her. I just told her that I didn't need her permission to handle my divorce how I wanted, and told her again to leave. She got more and more desperate, and her anger accelerated to the point that she physically attacked me. I did not expect her to actually do this. I'm not much of a fighter, but I do know the human body pretty well and where it's weakest. She hurt me pretty badly, but I got her off me. That part was very much on camera, and the whole audio was recorded on my phone. She finally left after that, and I immediately called to file a police report. I had the strangest feeling she'd try something similar and wanted to beat her to the punch. I was able to clean myself up by the time I had to face my kids, and while I downplayed the story, I did not lie to them about why I had a black eye. I told them, for their own safety, to steer clear of Amy. I also sent the footage to Paige and Zach, as well as pictures of my injured state before I cleaned up. They've also printed out the letters that reference Kaylee as Luke's child. I really feel like Amy just screwed herself over on all this. I don't know what her motives were. Was she protecting Luke? Was this his idea? Does she just really not want the world to know she's a homewrecker? Is she covering her own butt? As if people didn't know already? The more of my social circle I talk to and inform of the basics, the more people are confessing that they had wondered in the past if Luke wasn't cheating on me, but didn't have any concrete proof. I suppose Amy doesn't want her kids to know who fathered them, which does line up. But I'm still not sure about Tom. I didn't ask Amy about him in particular. I don't know why you guys are so eager for these updates, but I don't mind posting them. I've never blogged about my life before. I'd imagine it feels something like this. Now, for a few important comments. On pressing charges, I included it in my report. The sound of the laptop breaking is definitely on my phone and should be on the camera as well. So far as I know, she hasn't been arrested, but I am aiming for a restraining order now. Has Amy been arrested for attack? Send the recording of the attack. I sent word to Kat. As far as I know, Amy hasn't been arrested. No idiots here. That's evidence. I'm not sending it to anyone without the A-OK from my lawyer. On if Amy has family around or not, she's not in contact with her family and hasn't been for many years. They abused her. Luke's family became her family. She never actually admitted to having an affair, actually. I noticed that too. Now for the brief update. Hey guys, it's been a rough week. A lot has happened. I don't really want to talk about all of it in detail, so I'm going to keep this short. I know I never shut up. It's just how I am, but I'm going to be much more brief this go around. Luke has a lawyer now. I don't know him, but he met with Zach and Paige. To everyone saying I should have Amy arrested, I probably could have if I had shown the police the video. Instead, I just sent it to my lawyer. Maybe this makes me foolish, but even now, I think part of me is still trying to protect people I once loved and go easy on them. But everything's been on hold for the past few days because Jim had a heart attack. I saw Luke and I saw Amy and Amy's kids at the funeral. It was the first time we were all together since before all this happened. Nobody talked about what's going on, short of Amy briefly apologizing for what happened before. She did seem sincere. I'll give her that. But I wasn't about to call her out anyway. Amy, Luke, and Kat all seemed pretty devastated. I was too. But we all agreed not to argue or talk about the divorce and to just let the day be a ceasefire to focus on Jim. Luke and I had a nice conversation about him. I've been spending time with my kids and taking a couple of days off work. I have enough of them on the back burner. Luke also saw the kids twice, before and after the funeral, with me present. It went well. At my direction and Sophie's, they didn't mention Amy, and Luke didn't try anything funny with any of them. I think he does miss them and hate that he can't see them, thanks to all this. The kids are also pretty upset about losing Grandpa, on top of not being able to see Dad as much as before. I don't think any of them blame me, but that's far from the point, frankly. Carter slept in my bed the last 3 nights. I'll get more into this in the future when I have the energy to talk about what's going on in more detail. But whoever suggested that Kat lied about the test results was correct. She never sent them in. She confessed as much to me. I guess she didn't feel comfortable going behind her son's back, but did feel comfortable lying to me to protect him until she didn't, until she felt guilty and she came clean. Under the circumstances, I am not angry with her, but I know better than to trust her anymore. As far as I know, she did not tell Luke about the test, but it means Tom could still be Luke's son. Probably is. My lawyers finished going through Luke and Amy's letters with a finer tooth comb. The bottom line is, they definitely found what it was that Amy didn't want me to see, and I now completely understand why she was so panicked. It has to do with why Amy and Luke didn't marry conventionally. They did something very bad, but this is genuinely something that I'm not sure I should be talking about, even on an anonymous internet post. I haven't even been able to collect my feelings about what Amy and Luke have done, especially with everything else going on, so I don't know if I should be more explicit. I'm sorry. I know that's not what anyone wanted to hear, but please try to understand. Paige agreed with me that when in doubt, don't post it. And I've told my lawyers to put a pin in it for now, because I'm in no fit state to figure out how to proceed with it, or if I should use it against them. I'm just feeling like, shoot, honestly, it's difficult not to blame myself for Jim. I can only imagine Luke and Amy are blaming themselves too. I know they're bad people. I don't forgive them. But this tore them apart, as it did me. And I think all three of us feel like the divorce stressed Jim out to the point where it may have contributed. He already had heart disease. And in particular, I blame myself for showing him what I showed him. I showed him proof of the affair shortly before he died. I'll be carrying that with me for a very long time, even if I shouldn't. I'll update again whenever I do. I'm sorry. I'll respond to comments as I can. Now for a few important comments. When asked if this started when the swinging ended, OP said, 6 years of misery sound awful. I would very much hate that. Then another commenter said, it sounds like you're dealing with a lot. Take care of yourself. OP replied, thank you. I'm trying my best. That's all for now. Am I the idiot for telling my jealous boyfriend to stop watching adult content if he wants me to stop listening to audiobooks? My boyfriend and I have been together for around 3 years, and we've had a pretty easygoing relationship. No big fights or anything until now, which is why I'm questioning myself so much. So I listen to audiobooks, not erotic ones, though I do partake in audio-only corn sometimes, because as becomes important later, I have a thing for nice voices, but somehow someone just reading smut off a page feels weird for me to listen to. No judgment to anyone else, of course, just not my thing. My BF has recently gotten a bug up his butt about me listening to them, especially when he's home, even though I always use headphones and do my best not to disturb him. Also, before anyone says it, my Audible account comes directly out of my own bank account. He has no reason to think it will affect his finances. Anyway, he only ever gave little snide remarks until the latest time, so I let it go. Most recently, I had been making us dinner and cleaning up behind myself as I did it, and because he was playing video games, and I get bored doing those kinds of things without something else to think about, I turned on my favorite audiobook and picked up where I had been listening the week before. I didn't realize he was in the kitchen until he jerked the cord on my headphones and asked if I was doing it again. I asked what he was talking about, and he just sighed and said that he needed to talk to me. We sat down, and I'll admit I was pretty pissed he had jerked on my headphones and not super willing to listen to anything right then. Another reason I might be an H. He said that it really bothered him when I listened to audiobooks from a man's perspective because he knows about my voice thing and that it makes him uncomfortable. I asked why, and he said that he couldn't get it out of his head that I was thinking intimacy things about the characters, and that along with the romantic elements made him really upset and felt almost like I wasn't fully committed to him. I asked if he realized I was listening to a book for teens written by a literal Mormon, and that none of the books I listened to have smut. He said that it didn't matter, and started getting angry again, which just made me angrier. And he dropped the ultimatum that he wanted me to stop, or else we would need to break up. I was so pissed at this point that I just shrugged and said, "Gladly. The minute you stop watching Korn, I'll never touch any of it again." Which had him pissed because he claimed he never said anything about Korn, only the romantic and intimacy parts of the books I listened to. I said that if he was allowed to make ultimatums of favorite pastimes, why can't I? Then I asked if he would rather give up video games since that's closer to what audiobooks mean to me. He ended up just saying to fucking forget it and went to bed, but has been pissed at me since. I talked to my friends about the situation and got mixed answers, so I wanted to try with strangers as well. Now for a few important comments. One commenter said, "This is a big red flag to me. Is he so insecure that he can't stand the idea of you listening to another man? You weren't even listening to anything provocative when he did this, and he had that kind of reaction. Where is all his anger coming from? The fact that he dropped an ultimatum, books for fuck's sake, or breaking up is insane to me. This seems like such an odd thing for him to want to have control over. You're wearing headphones, not listening to it on speakerphone, and you're minding your own business, and he has the audacity to be upset you're doing that. Personally, I would cut ties. But if you feel like he's a good partner to you in other aspects and he isn't controlling about other things you do, i.e. what you wear, who you hang out with, etc., then maybe try talking it out when he's calm." OP replied, "He did try to explain that he felt as if I was reacted to the romantic parts in ways I don't react to him, which almost made sense. But then all I can think is, yeah, of course I do. This kind of romantic thing doesn't exist in real life and I don't expect it to, but to hear about it is enough to make me blush or laugh because it's cute. I've never expected him to be an over-the-top romantic. I don't think I would enjoy it in real life. It would more than likely overwhelm me, but I do like to hear about it, I guess. This part does make me feel a little bad because at the time I was so angry about the headphone pulling. I don't know why it set me off so bad. No one has ever done it to me before, but for some reason it had me pissed. I couldn't even react to it like I should have. I honestly maybe should have asked to wait, the more I think about it." The commenter responded, "He put his hands on you, girl. He's getting mad over fictional characters' stories. I'd think long and hard about what you want to do going forward." Another commenter added, "He's weirdly hung up on this voice thing. Pleasant voices are soothing, relaxing, etc. It's not like you stopped cooking dinner to masquerade spread eagle on the counter while moaning the narrator's voice. Jeesh. I feel your ultimatum is fair. Anywho, let's get to the important part. What author are you talking about?" OP responded, "The Midnight Sun audiobook, and I know Twilight in 2024. But Jake Abel pulls off making Edward both a scary 100-year-old vampire and an eternally teenage boy in love. And it's fun. I love it. I had to see if it's bad. I adored the original series when I was younger, and then this one dropped and New Moon stopped being my favorite of the series. Now for the 2-month update. So it's been a while. I didn't think I would update because the original update would have been mostly us talking and working things out, agreeing that whenever he felt insecure, he could tell me, and I could focus my attention on him for a while. It worked really great. Well, until I found out he had been freaking his coworker, that is. I don't have the details. I don't want the details, but he admitted to it in the end, so he did it. That's enough. He wanted to work it out and apologized, begged for a second chance. But honestly, the idea that he said a word to me about an audiobook about Edward frickin' Cullen while he was getting strange on the side, it ended the life of any opportunity for forgiveness I had inside of me. It was so ridiculous. I laugh thinking about it now, and it's been a month since we broke up. Like, it makes me feel insane. It is so funny. He was yelling at me for listening to a book about Mormon vampires while he was cheating on me, XD. I cannot make this shoot up. 100 points to whoever said projection the first time I posted. I can't remember if it was a comment or a message, but you were right. I wish I had a cookie. Thanks for the help anyway. Even if the relationship is a bust now, I really do appreciate you all. Am I the idiot for packing my wife's bags after she cheated on me. I have been married to my wife, Kate, for 4 years, together for 9. Our relationship has been amazing, loving, and supportive. We have good communication, hardly ever argue, and our bedroom life has gone from strength to strength over the years. We discussed cheating in the past, and I was always clear that we would be over if it ever happened. Kate went home to visit her family last weekend, which was fairly normal. Before she left on the Friday night, we had a minor argument about keeping the house tidy, so our communication was limited on Saturday, but I knew she was going out to meet some friends at a bar. I trusted her 100%, so didn't think anything of it. Before I fell asleep, I texted her saying that I hope she had a nice night. When I woke up on Sunday morning, I had a missed call from Kate at 4 a.m., so I immediately called her to check if she was okay, but no answer. After a few hours, I tried again a few times, but still no answer. Around an hour later, I got a message saying she was fine and was driving back soon. Kate got home late afternoon and looked awful. She had clearly been crying, was not wearing any makeup, unusual for her, and looked like a shell of a person. I knew right away something was wrong, but she wouldn't let me hug her and would barely speak. I sat her down on the couch and made her some tea. I gently encouraged her to tell me what was wrong, and she burst into uncontrollable tears for at least 10 minutes while I was trying to comfort her. She then proceeded to tell me, stopping every few words, that she had slept with someone last night after the bar. At that moment, something in my brain broke. I can't describe it any other way. I immediately got up and jumped in my car and drove off. I went to a park and walked around it for about an hour. Kate was calling my phone constantly, and I turned it off. When I got home, I grabbed 2 suitcases from the garage and went to our bedroom. I threw some of Kate's clothes and shoes into them and left them by the front door. Kate was lying on the floor in the living room, curled up into a ball, sobbing. I called her best friend who lives nearby and told her that Kate needed a place to stay and a ride to her place, and that Kate could explain everything to her later. I told Kate I was leaving for an hour and that her friend was coming to pick her up. She grabbed onto my legs, trying to stop me from leaving. When I returned home again, Kate was gone, and so were the cases. On Monday, with a clearer head, I answered one of Kate's many calls and told her that I needed her to send me an email with as much detail as possible of that night, and if she leaves anything out, there will be no hope of reconciliation. I received this email on Monday night, but still haven't opened it. Since then, everyone has been trying to contact me, but I have just been working, exercising, and sleeping. One of her friends turned up at my house with an attitude demanding an explanation. I told her to speak to Kate and close the door in her face. I have also been speaking to divorce lawyers, have moved money into separate accounts, and blocked Kate and all of her friends on everything. Everything I have done since I found out seems like I have been on autopilot. I don't feel angry, upset, or overly emotional, just numb. Kate posted a note through the door yesterday asking me to meet tomorrow, but I'm conflicted. Should I meet her? Will it change anything? Is there any point in trying to reconcile? Is it normal to feel like a robot? And how do I snap out of this? Edit. Just to add that when I came home the first time, Kate confirmed it was consensual. She was drunk but knew what she was doing. Now for a few important comments. Commenter 1. You better read it. See if it was a blackout drunk night and she woke up not knowing where or how, and her last memory was with a friend at the bar. Too bad the Terminator kicked in, so you could have rung the friends she was with to gauge if they are covering for her. That's if she doesn't remember and she hasn't admitted to anything. What if it was non-consensual? Her waterworks didn't quell the fire, obviously. She confirmed it was consensual. She was drunk, but knew what she was doing. It was one of the only things I asked when I came home. I obviously asked her why, and she just kept wailing and crying. Now for the update. After reading your comments, I decided to meet with Kate but not read the email. Kate came to the house yesterday, and when I opened the door, she looked terrible. She tried to hug me and started mumbling apologies, but I stopped her and we sat down to talk. I started by telling Kate that I would be recording the audio of the conversation, and she agreed. I then asked her to explain what happened and told her that I haven't read the email she sent. Kate said she had been at the bar with two friends. I know and like both of them, and told me what she had to drink. I was surprised at how little she drank because it was the same amount we would normally drink when going for dinner, a few glasses of wine and a cocktail. She admitted she was only slightly tipsy. One of her friends, Sarah, has a younger brother, Max, who came to pick them up around midnight. It's a running joke in their group that Max has had a major crush on Kate since high school, and I had heard them joke about this. The four of them went to get some food, and Max then dropped each one off until it was just him and Kate. Kate said she didn't want him to drive the 20 mins to her parents' Magal place after working all day, so would just order an Uber from his apartment. She went into his apartment to order the Uber, but couldn't get one. Max suggested she should crash in his bed and he would take the sofa. He would then drop her off in the morning. Kate refused and continued to try to find an Uber. They were sitting on Max's bed and he kissed her. She kissed him back and they ended up having intimacy. After that, she broke down crying from guilt and Max took her home. She cried for another hour, then tried to call me to tell me what she had done. We had to stop a number of times because Kate kept breaking down and crying hysterically. She told me it was a huge mistake. She got caught up in the moment. It was terrible. She only loves me, blah, blah, blah. After she was done, I told her that her story didn't make sense, but it didn't matter at this stage because I was done. This caused another breakdown. I told her I was going to continue with the divorce preparations, but for the next month, we would be separated with no contact. I also told her that we would both remain faithful, would get a full STD panel, and she would tell our mutual friends and family what happened. If she sticks to these conditions, I would be willing to meet again to see if there was any way forward other than divorce. She enthusiastically agreed to this, but made it clear that she did not expect me to stay faithful to her. I know many of you will criticize this decision, but I need to be sure that divorce is the right option after I have had time to process everything that has happened. I am still 99% sure that is where we are heading, but I need to be 100% certain. Now for a few important comments. Commenter 2. You should reach out to Sarah and ask for her side, especially as if you decide to give your wife a chance. Mandatory requirement will be no contact to Max at all, and this, your wife has to accept, may mean the end of her friendship with Sarah if Sarah cannot accept her brother being persona non grata around your wife. And somehow I get the feeling Sarah may have set this up. She no doubt is aware of her brother's feelings towards your wife and would love it if your wife and her brother became a couple. Thanks for the advice. My question is, does it even matter at this point? She cheated, maybe once, maybe 100 times, but even if Sarah is involved and Kate cuts her out completely, it doesn't change anything. Not being argumentative, just wondering if it's worth the extra digging. A few things have happened in the last week, so I thought I would make an update post if anyone is interested. First of all, I'm not in robot mode anymore. I have been having bursts of intense feelings of anger and betrayal, but have been keeping busy with work and exercise. My friends have also been great since they found out and have been dragging me out of the house to hang out. I decided to read the email and wish I hadn't. The story Kate told in the email was mostly the same, but there was no mention of going into Max's apartment to order an Uber. There were also pretty explicit details of what they did, for how long, and that they had apparently used a condom. I will never be able to forget this description. Many people who were originally criticizing me for kicking Kate out of the house have now apologized, but they can keep it. Kate's parents reached out to apologize, and I spoke to them because we had a good relationship before all of this. They begged me to try to work it out, but said they understood if I decided to get divorced. I didn't commit to either option. Kate's other friend that was there that night contacted me to tell me her side of the story. It mostly matched up. Bar food home. She said Kate could stay over at her house, but she refused, saying she was driving home early the next morning. Max apparently insisted that he would take Kate home. The version of the story that she told didn't mention Kate trying to get an Uber, only that Max invited her in and she accepted. I asked her if she had ever suspected anything before, and she told me that about a year ago, she went to meet Kate for coffee, but found Max sitting with her when she arrived. Apparently, Kate looked guilty, but when asked about it, she said they just met by chance. Sarah, Max's sister, also reached out to me, and I spoke to her too. She was angry with both Max and Kate and told me a similar story. Apparently, her whole family are angry with Max, and she had not spoken to Kate since she found out. She apologized on behalf of her idiot brother and said she had warned him to stay away from Kate since high school. She didn't think anything else had happened between them. I have had zero contact from Kate, but heard that she was going to be moving into an Airbnb near our house. Apparently, she is not coping well and called in sick from work a few times over the last few weeks. She does have support from the friend she is currently living with, and I asked her parents to keep an eye on her. Her parents came up to see her this past weekend. I went out with some friends at the weekend and ended up drunk at a bar. I was talking to a girl there who I probably could have gone home with, but I stopped myself because I wanted to keep my self-respect. Reading the email and hearing what they had done made me give up hope of repairing this, especially when I know she is not being truthful with me on other things, so who knows? I will be moving ahead with the divorce and might not even wait a month before telling Kate that this is my final decision. I debated posting this update, but a lot of people seem to be invested in this mess, so here it is. Apologies in advance if this is TMI. Kate sent me an email last week asking to pick up some things she needed for work. My lawyer told me not to prevent her from having access to the house or her possessions, so I reluctantly agreed that she could come over on Thursday night when I would be at the gym. I told her to be out by 7:30, but when I got home at 8, she was still there. When I walked in, she had left a few work-related items next to the stairs, and she was chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked amazing with her hair and makeup done, wearing one of the dresses I like. The whole place had been tidied and cleaned. I calmly asked her to leave immediately, and she made her way to the door but stopped and asked if we could speak. I should have said no, but I eventually agreed. We sat down and had a conversation for around an hour, which jumped from topic to topic. Again, I told her I would record the audio, and she agreed. I started by asking her if she had kept her side of the agreement we made the last time we spoke. She said she had taken an STI test, which was all negative. Mine was too, thankfully, and a pregnancy test, which was negative. She hadn't been with anyone else, and also told a few friends and family what happened, and many of them were angry and were not speaking to her. I asked a lot of questions that had been turning over in my mind for the last few weeks. She confirmed that her reason for going into Max's apartment, the Uber story, was BS, and she said he invited her in for a drink, and she agreed, knowing at some level that something was going to happen. She can't explain why she did this, other than being selfish and enjoying the attention. She also confirmed that she had texted with Max a few times over the years because he would shower her with compliments and make her feel good. He would always initiate, and she was apparently careful not to lead him on, and said she had never sent him explicit messages or pictures. Kate also told me that they had hooked up about 6 months before we got together, but never had intimacy. She admitted that she was always a bit curious. Her story about being caught at the coffee shop was that Max had texted her asking what she was up to, and she had told him where she was. He then turned up. She swore this was the first time they had ever done anything since we had been together. She said there was nothing missing in our relationship, and she hates herself for ruining her perfect marriage and causing me so much pain. I told her that I still don't believe her story and that there was no point in continuing the conversation. She calmly asked what she would need to do to make this right, offering up her phone, location sharing, not going out without me, etc. She had clearly been doing some research. I said that I had no plans to become her prison guard, especially when I would never get over the betrayal. Things then took an unexpected turn, which caught me completely off guard. She asked me to turn off the audio recording because she had something private she wanted to discuss and didn't want other people hearing it. I refused, and she reluctantly continued. She asked if I had been involved with anyone else sexually since all of this happened, making it clear she was fine with it. I told her no, and she said that I must be going crazy. We used to have intimacy almost daily, and started talking dirty about all of the things I could do with and to her. This involved a lot of kinky things that I had wanted to try or had only done a few times. She said she wanted to meet my needs even if we did not get back together. She said we could have as many threesomes as I wanted from now on, or we could be open on my side only, and she would even find partners for me. She was trying very hard to turn me on, and I stayed silent until she asked who I wanted to have a threesome with. For some reason, I mentioned the name of her coworker who is 5 years younger than Kate and a total knockout. This surprised her, but she was in too deep and asked me what I wanted to do with her. I went into detail about a pretty hardcore scenario, and Kate was encouraging me until I said that she would just be watching. This again caught her off guard, but she went along with it. Later on, I realized that I only said all of this as a petty attempt to hurt Kate, which I don't feel good about. She was obviously convinced that her plan was working, so she pulled up her dress and got into my favorite position on the couch, begging me to have intimacy with her. I'll admit that for a few seconds my body reacted, even though my head was not in the game. Everything suddenly came into focus, and the content of her email came flooding into my head. I can't explain why, but I started to laugh. Not just a chuckle, but a full-on belly laugh. She looked hurt and moved away, then started to cry. I told her it was time for her to go, and she left quickly, probably due to the embarrassment. I also said she needed to hurry up and get a lawyer because we are getting divorced. The post-nut clarity after she left confirmed that I had dodged a bullet. I have a meeting with my lawyer later this week and want to move forward with the divorce as quickly as possible. Now for the final update. My wife admitted to having a drunken one-night stand last week, and it has turned me into a robot. Thought I would provide a final update on the situation for anyone that is interested. The last few months have been tough, and I have only seen Kate in person a handful of times. After a few weeks of no contact, I decided that we should discuss things with a clearer head. We went for lunch and had a calm, respectful conversation about everything that had happened and what reconciliation might look like. Kate said she would do anything to get things back on track, and I believe her, but didn't commit to anything. After that, Kate asked me to go with her to see her therapist, who is also experienced in dealing with married couples. I thought about it for a few days before agreeing. The session was tough with a lot of tears, but I didn't get a straight answer on why Kate had decided to cheat. The therapist was surprisingly fair to both of us and was not judgmental. We again discussed reconciliation, but I told her that I thought it was best to proceed with the divorce. Last week, I drove up to her parents' house to drop off some tools I had borrowed from her dad. We had arranged for Kate to be there and for her parents to go out for a few hours to give us a chance to talk. I spoke with her parents alone, who were heartbroken, which was hard, but they were both very supportive. During the conversation with Kate, I told her clearly that I had given it a lot of thought, but I wanted to move ahead with the divorce. It came down to the fact that, in my view, we would never get back to where we were, and I realistically can't see myself ever getting over the betrayal. Even if we could regain the trust, it could take a decade of hard work, and that is too big of a risk for me. Kate finally accepted this, and we had calm discussion about how we would divide assets, sell the house, etc., and wrote an email to our respective lawyers. We left each other on good terms. The divorce should be finalized by the end of the year, and the house will be put up for sale soon. In the meantime, we will go no contact and agreed not to start dating until everything is finalized. I have had a few casual hookups, and it feels strange to be going back to being single after all this time. I have been hitting the gym, spending a lot of time with friends and family, and getting back into my hobbies. I'm optimistic about the future, and although I'm still devastated by the loss of my marriage, I feel that this has made me grow as a person. Thanks to those of you who have offered advice and support.